Okay, so I have put out about a teaspoonful of red. I'm gonna put out a teaspoonful of blue. I can pour my blue, I hope, because I don't want to clean my palette knife. I feel like I'm wasting and using a lot of paint that way as well. So something like dripping out a bit of blue might be, of course, then I did a whole lot of blue. So probably I'm going to paint a blue. Actually, that would be a really great way to start, right? Since I need a swatch of red, yellow, and blue, maybe before I mix those colors, I'm going to take that blue and I'm going to paint a swatch of blue. So when I get over to doing my orange, I've already got that. Thinking does pay off. All right, I'm going to put some of my paint into a side cup so that I can have cups of different colors to rinse in. I've got my brush wet. I now tap it onto a paper towel so that it's damp but not wet. I'm gonna take that blue paint, and if it's too sticky, I'm gonna dip my brush in the water and pull it back over here to the paint and play with it a little bit so it gets a little more runny. I've already folded a piece of paper here into 3-inch squares. You don't have to, I just like to be organized. This is pulling nicely across, so I think I've got a pretty good texture. It is leaving, you may not be able to see, it's leaving a lot of paper showing through, but I am going to go the other direction. So I'm just going to keep getting it wet over here, or I'm going to keep loading, the paint into it. Wet usually means water. Okay, it's too sticky. It's leaving too much paper under, so I'm going to dip it, put it back in the paint. See if I can get it to pull smoothly across in the direction I'm going for about 3 inches. Yeah, I'm actually dipping my paint my brush quite a lot. So this paint does need to be loosened up. It doesn't really paint very smoothly from side to side. Or fill in kind of have to brush back and forth a little bit or rub the bristles of my brush on those spots where I'm seeing light, because paper has a tooth, right? So the paint sits up on top of the mountains and doesn't go down in the valleys of the paper. Now notice I'm brushing in the opposite direction of my first move, so I'm getting a multi-directional layer that is smooth and linen-like. Pretty satisfied with that swatch. I see a couple of white spots here. I'm just going to tap those out, pull my brush once more from left to right, because that's where my smoothest move is. Call that good. That'll dry. The blue should be mixed into the red. I believe that will get me a better purple than mixing the opposite way. Blue, cool colors usually are red as darker, and we'll take it down a little bit. Now, if I don't want to get my palette knife into my blue, then what I'm going to do is take my blue and I'm going to put a little bit of that into here. And then I'm just going to take a bit of that, stir it in, see what kind of purple I can get. I actually need my color wheel to go back and see if this is too red. I feel like that's still reading a bit too red. This is probably a purple red. So I'm going to pull some more blue in. Or blue violet, we call it, right? My purple is pretty dark, but that's going to be a good thing because my yellow is pretty light. So let's start seeing what yellow does to that. I'm going to say that this now is my Oh, you know what I should have done? Stopped a little early because my brush has so much blue in it. It's going to change that a lot. So I'm going to wipe the blue out of my brush. It's all experiential, right? This live and learn stuff. I'm going to dip my brush into there. This now is blue water. I'm not going to dip anything in there that's not a cool tone color or something that doesn't have blue in it, right? If I start dipping oranges into that, it's going to dull out my paint and I'm going to end up with a black or a gray that was not intentional. I don't have to clean all this blue out. I'm just taking a whole bunch of pigment out until my brush gets a little cleaner. This does have a blue base in my paint, so I'm okay with that. Here's what I'm going to do. Instead of using my palette knife, so I don't have to clean so much, I'm going to go get a stick to stir with, because my paint has a little bit of juice on top. And that's part of the paint, so it needs to be stirred down in. I have some sticks around. Popsicle sticks are probably a good thing we should put into your kit. Make this whole thing a lot easier. If you guys are near a craft store or you find anything like that, I don't know that a Q-tip is strong enough to do this, but you might want to start finding alternative to cleaning this palette knife 17 times during your, at least 3 times, right? Right, I'm putting some yellow. I'm putting it far away from my paint because I have blue over there and I want to control my outcome. So, putting some yellow out. Checking every time I pour something to see if the lids are on all my jars, so I'm not wasting a ton of paint that way, right? I'm going to put some yellow down on a swatch, so I have that. This is a stiffer brush too. You might find if you go to buy a brush, if you get a brush that's not as soft as the brush that you got, that it works better with a thicker paint, or it pulls it a little heavier. It also leaves a harder line into it, so you may want to mix a little more water so it flows after you put it on the paper. I move my brush the way I move my markers, so I go from one edge to the middle and then from the other edge to the middle. That helps keep my desk a little bit clean. I don't think a super clean freak, but I also like to be organized. I like to be able to find things when I want them. I like things to stay clean enough that I'm not getting my colors muddied without wanting. You know, I want to be in control of my work, basically. And my outcome for sure. Brushing lightly, I can see I've got a little glop in there, so I'm going to pick that out with my paintbrush. I'll wipe it on a paper towel because I want a nice smooth surface. There's another one. I'm just going to push it to the edge. I'm going to pull smoothly over top. Looks like I need a little more flow, so I'm going back to the water. Now what I want to do is mix into my yellow let's see. Yes, purple into my yellow to make a black. I'm going to actually take half of my yellow because I want my gray yellow to be a different container than my black yellow. So I'm going to mix this purple into here. It's turning kind of a weird orange, right? Because I've basically got a purple with a lot of red in it going into a yellow. I'm going to wipe some yellow out of my brush. I don't think I have to do a whole lot of that, but I am going to dip it back into the water. before going into this orangey, purpley yellow and mixing that a little more so that it's not stripy and streaky. Smashing my brush down a bit into that. So yeah, it's quite orange. Now I'm going to hold my brush over top of this. If I had something black, I might put that up there just for reference. And say, is this halfway between I think it's a pretty good step. I might put a little bit more, of it in. Now, I don't want to get this into my purple, so I'm going to take this purple. I don't know if I really need to be that finicky about it, but I'm going to take this purple over here first, so I keep my purple clean. And pull this purple then into here. Also, this is a good way to get more use out of your stuff. If I brush my palette knife like this, I'm pulling purple off the knife. I'm mixing it into here. And that's making it so I'm not using so much paint or having to pull more out of my jars. There's not a lot of paint on the bottom of this. It almost feels like the thing is empty, but I know that if I wet it, I'll be able to do a 3-inch swatch. So that's pretty good. I think that's my deal. I'm going to paint that right here. Notice I'm going in the in-between space because I don't want to paint up to a line quite yet. So I'm looking at this purple and this orangey purple and this yellow and saying, yeah, this is going to be my what goes in between those two. This is my mid-tone gray. I'm squinting at it a lot. I look at it through my eyelashes and it takes out some of the color information so that I can read value information. It is quite deep. It's actually closer to the purple than it is to the yellow because I put that extra purple in there. So I'm probably not honestly at a number 5, but I felt like I wanted it to be more red because I almost had like a yellow orange earlier. So yeah, these nuances you're going to have to sort of play with and decide for yourself as you go. This is mostly a learning assignment. It's not like I can expect you to do a perfect number 5 in between here, but I actually haven't mixed a black, so I don't have anything to compare it to. So let's compare it to this. I like that. That's pretty darn good, right? So I'm holding my gray card, which you can hold your 50% gray that you made last week with your swatches over top of whatever you're making and see if you think that's pretty good gray. Now I can go closer to black by mixing more of this dark color into this red, right? It should be that by mixing this purple that I have here with this, actually I think I am just going to go more purple into that. I've got my swatch, I'm ready to go forward. See if I can start getting something that looks kind of black here. It's very light and very red because I put the yellow into it. So I think I'm going to need, more blue to bring the value down, but also to get it to stop reading as an orange. So I'm just going to go for it. I'm going to dirty my blue and put my knife into it. Bring some blue over. Immediately that goes almost to black in my palette. Getting quite dark. It feels like a dark brown. People talk about browns in terms of like, is it a blue brown or is it a reddish brown or is it a yellowy brown? So now you understand why. They want to talk about the mixture of those colors and what was mixed to make it up, or if it's just on this side of the black. As I do this, I'm getting more yellow because my brush had quite a lot of orange yellow, so I'm going to bring more blue. Be a little liberal with the blue because I really want to go dark. Come to the dark side. This is, in my experience, the hardest black to mix. It's the hardest one to get to go to black. And that is because yellow is so bright. Or so high on the value scale, I should say. Since brightness now is a term we use for computer. Yeah, that moved it towards it. See, it's a cooler black. It's moving away from that orangey black. So what I have here is sort of a warm brown or a warm, yeah, it's a very dark brown. A brown I would describe as being warm. So that means I still need to go more blue because my yellow is overpowering or my yellow is still speaking up. Or my red and yellow. This thing that I mixed here is really orangey red. I may want to go back into that and see if I can't put, what would I do? I'd put more blue into my purple. Still seeing a little bit of brown in my light. Cooler, 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 cooler. Amazing how much blue I'm mixing into here, really. I'm finding that I have to add a lot of blue to this. And I'm not just specifically taking purple and yellow. I'm putting a lot of blue into this to try and get it to go black. So now I have a value that looks almost black to me. I would say it's a warm black, but I'm going to go for a swatch of it before I make my next move. Feels very gray. When I paint it on the palette, it's like a charcoal, or not the palette, on the swatch. It's feeling like charcoal gray to me as I put it down here. Let's see if the camera can color correct for you on that. See how that looks black in the camera? Which water do I want to dip into? Definitely not the yellow. I'm going to go into the blue since I was having problems going darker. I'm going to dip in the blue cup. You could also get a new cup. All of these decisions are yours to make. So you're in control of your density. Should I edit stupid dad jokes out of this? Your density comes from a movie called Back to the Future. Dad jokes are usually puns, aren't they? Dumb puns. I don't know what that's about. But I guess you don't get a pun unless you were there in the past to understand what the word is or what the joke is relating to, right? It's probably more about the past tense than it is about a double entendre. Okay. I really like that black. I feel good about that. It's a lovely, lovely charcoal. However, I'm just going to put more blue in and see if I can get it blacker. So I'm that kind of student. I want my A grade. Let's see if more blue gets me blacker in value. My blue is pretty bright, so it looks to me like it's not going to get any better. This is starting to look like a blue black, where this looks like a warm black. Okay, so my next step, oh, you know what I didn't do? I didn't mix that with white. So I'm gonna have to paint a swatch of the blue black. Very good, we'll go with that. Do I like a warm gray better than a cool gray? I would say that depends on what it sits next to, right? You know, color is relative. So all of this favorite color conversation that people like to have is sort of inane to me. I hate having to answer that question. I usually refuse. Now it's probably looking to you that this gray and that gray are the same. And to me, honestly, it's quite close. But since I'm learning how this works and I want to know what the black looked like before I mixed the white into it, and I want Blaine to know what my black looked like before I mixed the white into it, this is all part of a really good learning process for me. All right, I've got a nice black. Now I'm going to take my white. I haven't even opened a jar of white. That might need stirring. Oh, it looks okay. I'm just going to plop a little bit out. Now I'm going to look into my palette and see that I have splattered paint. So I'm going to take a little bit of clean water on a paper towel. Give myself the advantage of a clean space to work that's not going to be tainted by a splatter of blue. I like to, maybe I'm a little bit anal. I like to lay my brushes along the paint palette next to the thing that they were in. That helps me when I'm using colors that are really close to each other and I know which brush I'm using for which color. So I have brushes for each color and I have water for each color, and it really helps me to keep the saturation and the value and the hues that I want under control. Yeah, that's dripping. I need another stir stick. Actually, just use the other end of this one. Give myself a dollop. I don't need much white. Well, I'm mixing black into white. I don't need much black. I probably need at least a half a teaspoon, if not a full teaspoon of white. Lid back on. This I'm going to use my palette. So I'm going to take my palette knife. I'm going to get that red out of there by stroking my brush across it. I could clean it, but I'm just going to try and integrate it. Actually, that's not going to pay off as I think about it. That's going to taint my white because the white is going to really show up. So I'm going to not be lazy. Do want that A. So I'm going to clean this puppy off. I wipe it. Then I get my paper towel wet. And I wipe it with a wet paper towel, especially the edges where the paint's hanging onto the knife. Okay, clean knife. Is going to scoop up this black, mix it into the white. And it's going to tell me, oh, I'm so happy. Look at this gray. Okay, people. This is a warm gray, but it is a gray. This often turns into a brown for me. If this were brown, then I would need to go over into my black. I would look at this brown, I would say, is it a blue brown, or is it a red brown, or is it a yellow brown? And then I would mix in whatever I needed to mix in there, right? If it was brown, it'd probably be orangey, and I probably would just need more blue. So it's probably a good thing that I added that little bit of blue at the end. Which swatch was that? This one here? I better make a mark. I'm gonna muck this one up. So I put a fingerprint in this swatch so I know not to use it for my final mounted homework. That swatch is now out of the running. And this one, I could even take this gray that I've mixed with this palette knife and squish it down here onto the page, but it's going to be really thin and scrapey, and it's not going to have the same texture that the other things have. So I'm going to grab another brush, or in your case, I'm going to go to the sink and I'm going to clean my brush, make sure that it's got all of the gunk out of it, so I can then go in What am I going to paint this with? Red, yellow, or blue? None of the above. I'm going to get a new cup because red, yellow, or blue in any amount, even just the amount that's like hanging out in the water there, is going to taint this or tint it, because white is so easily tinted. Now, this isn't white. This isn't like what you see up on the canvas thing. I think that mine's a little darker. I like it. I'm actually going to recommend that you guys don't go totally white. Don't try to get a total white. Just get it to maybe halfway between your 5 and your, better put notes about this up on canvas, right? Get it halfway between your 5 and your 0. Of course, when I make my homework, I'm not going to do 3-inch swatches. I'm going to cut these down so my ragged edges don't show. They're probably going to be about 2.5 inches. You're going to cut this out and mount it on the half piece of illustration board now. Okay, I actually have one more swatch to make with this. As I was washing my brushes, I realized, should I be mixing purple into blue? This is my purple, this is my blue, this is my purple into yellow. Let's see what I'm supposed to do on the assignment. Yellow, oh, purple's at the end. I had purple in the middle, that's why I'm confused. The neutral, the black goes here. So I have that, and I have my violet here. Here's my violet and my neutral. Here's my violet mixed with yellow, and here's my yellow. So this should be black mixed with violet. This should be in between black and violet here. Aha. Okay, now I have a swatch that's between my black and my purple, and a swatch that's between my purple and my blue. I still need to decide which one of these to use. Up here it's an orange, so I'll probably put the orange one in. And then it's actually closer to this orange here. So once again, I've had to paint a full page of swatches. To get 6 swatches, I have to paint almost 12.